I feel like every time I'm away from YouTube for a long time and don't do a longer YouTube video for a long time, I come back with some kind of update. Because of course, a month is a long time. I don't upload as frequently as others do, so sometimes a lot changes. So guess what? That means it's time for my Matt's first video in a month that is long form update intro thingy mabobber. I'll try to make this quick, but some of you who follow me on some of my socials will probably have heard about this by now because I will have posted about it. But recently I have just gotten a new game journalism job that is an hourly one. A pretty much full-time hourly journalism job, which is pretty awesome for me. This is something that I've been pursuing for a while, and after previously just kind of doing it in almost like a side hustle kind of way, the fact that I'm now actually doing it as a proper full-time job is super exciting for me, and I'm very happy about it. But for you guys, I wanted to let it be known this job is going to be a Monday through Friday thing, and as a result, of course, it's going to be super busy for me. So if videos are a little bit late to come out, my apologies. If the shorter new album reviews come out on Saturday as opposed to Friday, my apologies again. But of course, that job is my source of income. YouTube is not, so obviously priorities are what they are. And also, if some of these videos are a little tiny bit less detailed and less intricate in terms of the scripts that I use compared to some of my past videos, sorry, but between the stuff that I do, I want to just make sure that I can not crunch myself and be able to put these videos out in a timely fashion while not sacrificing the overall quality. Especially in months where there's going to be a lot more 10 years later videos to do, where I'll have a lot more albums that I want to talk about. So I just wanted to give that update and let you guys know what's going to be happening. Of course, if you guys want to check out my articles when I write them, the link to where I'm going to be writing for is going to be in the description down below. And of course, I thank you all for any kind of support that you give, be it that or this channel or my TikTok or anything of that kind. It's greatly appreciated. Now, on to what you guys came here for. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And I don't know if this video is going to be going up in the month of March or April, but it's being filmed in March because, once again, I want to try to get these 10 Years Later videos out sooner, and I didn't have any March albums to talk about, so I just decided to push the April ones forward, and that means we get to talk about a pretty huge one. As you can tell from the title, today we're going to be talking about the 2012 Nicki Minaj album Pink Friday Roman Reloaded, as well as the re-release Pink Friday Roman Reloaded the Re-Up. This was the second studio album from one of the most popular voices in hip-hop and by far one of the most iconic women in hip-hop, Nicki Minaj, following up on her 2010 debut album Pink Friday. We all know by now that Pink Friday was a major shakeup for hip-hop when it came out, with Nicki seeing success and doing numbers that hadn't been done by a female rapper in years, and she began to earn the respect of major names in rap like Eminem, Kanye West, Lil Wayne, and Jay-Z, just to name a few. With this record, Nicki focused a lot on her alter ego Roman Zolanski, while seeking to make an album that was just about having fun. She wanted to experiment with different styles and genres to not feel as boxed in as she did on her first record. Now, I'm not the most hardcore Nicki Minaj fan out there. Insert a pull up in the Sri Lanka joke. And I've had a complicated history with Nicki herself, both artistically and personality-wise, and with her stans too. But I enjoyed her 2010 album Pink Friday when I looked at it for this series back in 2020. Last year I also got to listen to Beam Me Up Scotty for the first time, her mixtape that catapulted her to popularity, since it was reissued on Spotify. And while I do think it was a bit of a mixed bag, I appreciate it for how it established Nicki as an artist and helped begin her massive rise in popularity. This was an album I was very curious about though. I heard a lot of polarizing things about it, even hearing some opinions about it potentially being Nicki's worst album, which says a lot given that I didn't really enjoy Queen all that much. And I'll admit the album already had some of my least favorite Nicki Minaj songs on it, which we'll get to later. On top of that, Roman Reloaded looked rather overwhelming in its length. Not that Nicki Minaj doesn't already put out long albums as it is, but the original release was 19 tracks and 69 minutes, nice. But the re-up edition adds 8 tracks and 32 minutes, bringing the full length to a whopping 27 tracks stretching an hour and 41 minutes. Whew. I'll also note that the deluxe edition of the album's original release also featured the David Guetta collaboration Turn Me On, so if you want to count that, this album's numerous releases combine out to 28 tracks stretching an hour and 45 minutes. That's a lot. It'd be fine if this album was a top to bottom masterpiece, but I have to say that while I did didn't think it was Nicki's worst, I see where the divided opinions come in. The album is a wildly mixed bag that has as much excellence as it has disappointment. Roman Holiday gets off to a good start with Nicki just rapid firing with some of her over-the-top goofy mannerisms throughout the first verse, even though some of that stuttering on the second verse was off-putting. Sadly, while the beat is pounding and banging, I found Marissa Bregman's singing on the hook to be a little more annoying than anything. Also, maybe I'm overthinking, but am I the only one who shivers when I think about Nicki having an alter ego named Roman Zelansky? I get what she's doing, but even if she claims no relation to Roman Polanski later in the album, I can't be the only one that feels weird about the fact that she based an alter ego around a guy who avoided arrest for drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl by fleeing the country. An even worse look, might I add, given some of the people she'd align herself with later in her career, like 6ix9ine for example. Regardless, this trend of Nicki going hard on verses but struggling to put together catchy hooks doesn't continue too often throughout the album, but it is prevalent on a track like the darker Come on a Cone. Though I got quite a laugh at some of the interludes where Nicki so gracefully sings about a dick going on someone's face. There are probably very few artists who I think can sing Put My Dick in Your Face like Nicki did without bursting out laughing. As I also said earlier, this album is also home to some of my least favorite Nicki Minaj songs. Beez in the Trap was a track I didn't really like all that much in my youth, and I'll be honest, I was not excited to return to it for this video. And surprise, surprise, it's still a song I can't say I like. The reverby beat and some of its awkward mixing were really uncomfortable to my ears, and I didn't even have headphones on while listening, so make of that what you will. Nicki's verse is fine, 2 Chainz has a decent performance, but that hook, blah, I still can't get into it. Though I do appreciate the Philly shout out, Nicki. And Stupid Ho, which closes out the standard edition of the album, has pretty much always been the bane of my existence. Listening to it again for this album, I wanted to turn it off right away. I see how Nicki fans can love this, I guess, but the song was auditory torture in every way. The beat just permeates everything on the song and rips your ears open. Nicki's vocals feel more obnoxious than usual, and the hook is by far one of the most annoying things Nicki has ever done. I know it was a diss at Lil' Kim, and I know people will say Nicki ended her or won or this or that, but like, I'm tired of pitting the queens against each other. I fell victim to doing that in 2018 with Nicki and Cardi, I'll fully admit it, and I think it was wrong of me to do so. Because these days I cringe when female rappers are put against each other and made to hate each other instead of lifting each other up. Rap is competitive and it's sport, I know, but a lot of people just take that shit too far. Sorry to go on a diatribe, but this song made me think about that. Anyway, one of the biggest criticisms of this album has been its more pop-oriented direction, but honestly, I don't think the pop direction is inherently bad. Nicki, in my eyes, has been able to make good pop and R&B leaning music in the past, so I don't mind it in theory. That doesn't mean every pop detour on the album works, but I didn't initially think it would be that bad. Take Starships, for example. This was a song I actually enjoyed a bit when I was a kid, which was rare for me to say when it came to Nicki. I can't say I'm too enthralled with it now, thanks to some of its overwhelming production elements, but I can't say Nicki sounds that out of place on it. Sure, her verses sound a bit awkward to me, but her vocals are totally fine, and I'd say the song is carried by that hook. Like, I can't pretend that chorus isn't catchy as hell and very fun, even if when I hear it I get flashbacks to that Today Show performance where she spat gibberish during the beat drop. It's not a favorite of mine, and it's not something I want to come back to much, but I definitely see its appeal and I think it's totally fine. Sadly, too many of the pop-flavored tracks lean on tired electronic dance pop trends that were being done ad nauseum in the early 2010s and were starting to get tired. While Nicki's attempts are far from the worst that I've heard, there are a lot of pop-leaning tracks on the album that I can't really give points to in the same way that I did to Starships. The hook on Pound the Alarm doesn't work nearly as well, the beat feels more obnoxious, and the only thing I care for on it is Nicki's rapping on the first verse. Can say the same for tracks like Whip It, Automatic, and Beautiful Sinner, which all would have landed on my least favorites for similar reasons as Pound the Alarm, if not for the fact that Nicki had some nice vocals on the choruses of these tracks. Young Forever is a respectable attempt at jumping into a more ballad-driven direction, and I think Nicki sounds nice on it, but the instrumental just feels a little too candy-coated for me. I don't think I'd come back to it in the same way I'd come back to Save Me or Your Love. And while I like the spacey feel of Fireburns, and I think Nicki sounds decent on it, this is another track that could have used a more interesting chorus. I respect Nicki's attempt at not letting herself get pigeonholed, but I think she's done this style much better both before and after this album. Speaking of that, I respect the effort at experimenting with a track like Gunshot, which takes on a bit more of a reggae pop feel, but it's another non-starter for me largely because neither the instrumental or chorus do all that much to grab me, although I think Nicki and Beenie Man have some good chemistry together. Let it be known though that there are plenty of tracks that are very enjoyable, specifically on the hip-hop side of the album. I Am Your Leader is a posse cut with a low-key dark beat, and on this one Nicki's over-the-top style works well for the quick hook. She also has extremely good chemistry with both Rick Ross and Cameron, the latter of whom has some good fast flows that round out the song very well. Hove Lane is a bouncy, almost electronic-leaning banger with some committed faster flows out of Nicki. And while the hook bordered on being weak because of its repetitiveness, Nicki managed to sell it pretty nicely. It's not one of her best, but it's a pretty good track I can pull from this album and throw in my regular rotation. The title track, Roman Reloaded, reins in its chorus nicely by not lasting overly long while being impactful in its short length. Nicki dominates this one, and as if the song needed anything else to go along with its banging production, Lil Wayne puts this beat in a body bag and puts on an incredible performance. Are we surprised that a Wayne and Nicki collab was good? No? Don't be. They always bring out the best in each other. And Champion is another posse cut with a soulful, celebratory instrumental that Nicki mixes her singing and rapping nicely on. Of course, with a posse cut, it's about making sure all the performances are good, which is why it's great news that Drake, Jeezy, and especially Nas all sound fantastic here. I'll also say there are a few poppier songs on here that I do quite like. Right By My Side leans more into the pop sound with a much brighter instrumental. Is it bubblegummy? You bet. But honestly, I could dig it. It's a sweet sounding song where Nicki and Chris Brown's vocals work solidly together, making for a nice pop leaning jam in the same boat as something like Your Love. Sex in the Lounge sees Nicki spit a slow flow as we get a pop and R&B fusion featuring Bobby V and Lil Wayne. While I do think the song is lifted a bit by Bobby V's stunning vocals over the more colorful instrumental, I think Nicki and Wayne do a nice job backing him up and adding a nice vibe alongside him. I honestly like this song in a lot of the same ways that I like a song like Shut It Down by Drake featuring The Dream. Marilyn Monroe is also easy to get into because of its smooth emotional feel and piano-driven instrumental. I do think the mixing can feel a bit loud, but I appreciate the song for being a very nice ballad where Nicki spills her insecurities and wears her emotions on her sleeve. Now, on top of all the songs I just talked about, that's not even it. Nicki re-released this as Pink Friday Roman Reloaded, the re-up, with 8 additional songs later in 2012, and I decided to look at that version since it had some rather big cuts on it. As it turns out, my feelings on this re-release were equally as mixed. I will say that it goes on a 3-track run that includes some of my personal favorite Nicki songs. Freedom is by far a high point as Nicki mixes nicely between strong rapping on her verses and nice singing on the hook. The beat feels light, but Nicki does a hell of a lot with it, giving the song a bit of a mixtape feel. She previously noted that this was one of her career faves, and I see no reason to disagree. It's definitely a high point. Hell Yeah is also a personal favorite of mine. I love the guitar-driven instrumental that feels like a perfect meeting of the worlds between the pop and hip-hop directions. And beyond Nicki bodying the verses, Parker Ely delivers beautiful vocals on what is by far one of my favorite choruses on the album. High School is another great example of Nicki blending the pop and hip-hop styles nicely with a fun, bright beat, great performance, and a nice verse from Lil Wayne, even with 1 or 2 of his bars feeling a bit dated. Otherwise, I'm glad to see the song got some new life on TikTok. It's a really fun song. Sadly, while those 3 tracks are great, I can't say I feel the same about the other 5. On Up in Flames, Renee Rowe and Amoy Levy drop a soulful chorus as Nicki raps with a slow flow over a darker hip-hop beat. I like some of her lyrics that even R. Kelly couldn't touch the kid bar really got me, but I kinda wish she adopted a slightly faster flow at some point because the slow cadence dulled just a bit for me. I'm Legit has a much more pounding electronic beat that's lucky it doesn't overpower the song because Nicki and Sierra are able to power through it. Sierra sounds great on the chorus, though I think some of the melodies don't grab me as much. And while Nicki goes ham on her verse, there are some more staccato moments that I don't dig quite as much. Still, while it's not a song I love, I see the appeal of it because of the sheer badass attitude of it, and I see why TikTok loves it so much. I Endorse These Strippers is by far my least favorite of the songs on the re-up. The electronic beat that feels similar to something like Chris Brown's Look at Me Now doesn't really grab me too much. Nicki's chorus feels like a another non-starter, and while I like some of the sex-driven lyrics here and there, the song as a whole does little for me. Tyga and Thomas Brinks don't do much with the song either, making this the weakest on the re-release. The Boys is a collaboration with Cassie that plays a little more into the pop styles with a lot of electronic sounds. While Nicki bodies her verses and Cassie has some nice vocal moments here and there, the instrumental dulls out and gets repetitive really fast. Not only that, but while both artists have some nice vocal moments, they equally have enough annoying moments to guarantee that this is a non-starter for me. And sadly, while I know quite a few people like this song, I think Va Va Voom is a disappointing note to end the album on. It's another electronic dance pop song that just does stunningly little for me. I suppose it's not the worst thing Nicki's done in this style, but it's another track that just kind of makes me content with the fact that we're not still in 2012 with songs sounding like this. Overall, while I don't find Nicki's 2012 album to be her worst, I'm still not too fond of Queen, I see where a lot of the polarization comes from because the album itself feels like it's polarized within itself. Here we have Nicki exploring two different directions with her hip-hop roots but also a lot of pop sounds. And to that effect, I respect the attempt at experimentation, especially for a sophomore album. I understand the idea of not wanting to be pigeonholed into one style, sound, or genre and wanting to have that ability to experiment and do whatever kind of music speaks to you. This is more of a personal diatribe, but as someone who is a game journalist, music reviewer, and poet, I like the idea of not being pigeonholed into one category. The problem is, while Nicki herself retains her talents as a performer and lyricist, even when some of her vocal choices can be a bit silly, this album splits itself down the middle. Many of the hip-hop tracks see Nicki in top form, while the pop tracks sink the album hard. It also doesn't help that the record is incredibly long and loaded with too many tracks. If this project was cut down to about 12 tracks combined between the original version and the re-up, we'd be looking at an album that's even better than Nicki's debut, and honestly, maybe even better than Beam Me Up Scotty in my opinion. Sadly, the album doesn't quite reach that and ends up languishing as a project that is evenly loaded with excellent highs and unfortunate lows. Back in 2012, I didn't really like Nicki Minaj all that much, so I can't say I would have enjoyed this thing. Listening to it now, I can't say it was Nicki's worst commercial album, but it was an extremely mixed bag. If I had to put it on my scale, it would probably get an okay rating. Straight across the board, the original version of the album is an okay, the re-up is an okay, so all in all, it's an okay. It's a tale of two halves that features some greats, but also feels pretty inconsistent. But that's just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2012? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then, hate it back then? Do you still love it now? Do you still hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent toward it? And where do you stand with it in terms of Nicki's discography? Is it one of your favorite Nicki albums? Least favorite Nicki albums? Whatever your thoughts and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. I have a couple more 10 years later videos that I'm going to be filming right after this. The next one that I'm going to be doing is going to be on Chance the Rapper's 10 Day. Got a bit of hip hop coming at you guys, so stay tuned for that. But until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.